Why would a guy who died over 2000 years ago still be called the Great? He really must have been exceptional, right? Well, Alexander the Great certainly fits that bill, but he wasn't just a simple conqueror. He was a military genius, a cultural icon, and a bit of an enigma. Let's untangle the legend and see why Alexander's story continues to fascinate us today. Hi, my name is Sebastian. You're watching Mistakes That Changed the World. It's hard to find an equal in the history books that compares to Alexander the Great. He truly was exceptional. I mean, his tactics alone are still taught in military academies to this day. It is said that when Julius Caesar came before a statue of Alexander, he fell at its feet and wept, because the great conqueror had achieved more by the age of 32 than Caesar himself had up to that point. So why does Alexander still have this immortal attraction to us? After all, if he was so great, why did his empire fall? Because of one simple reason. Alexander didn't name a successor. The vast empire he had created collapsed because he didn't want to pass the torch on. Alexander was born in 356 BC to Philip II, the powerful king of Macedonia. Most mothers believe that their firstborn will be a great man, but Alexander's mother, Olympias, believed her son was destined only for greatness. Some say she even claimed he was Zeus's son. Philip himself doubted the child's origin after it was said that he had surprised his wife in the embrace of a snake, a creature whose form Zeus often took. So to make sure he was the father, Philip sent a messenger to the oracle of Apollo at Delphi. The oracle simply replied that Zeus should be venerated above all the other gods. The oracle also said that Philip would lose the eye with which he had seen his wife with the snake. And after 2 years, he did indeed lose one of his eyes. Now, whether true or not, such stories and beliefs fueled Alexander's ambition and helped solidify his image as a future leader. There's also the fact that Olympias wanted first and foremost to secure her son's place on the throne. Philip had many wives and Olympias was a foreigner. If Philip took a Macedonian wife and a son was born from their union, that son would become the rightful heir. However, Olympias knew that if the world believed that her son was a god, no one would dare to challenge him. Alexander grew up in the capital city of Pella. King Philip was a shrewd leader and ensured his son would receive a top-notch education. Alexander studied warfare and philosophy and even befriended the famous thinker Aristotle. He greatly appreciated Aristotle's teachings, at one point saying, "My father gave me life, but Aristotle taught me how to live it well." But there were cracks in the family facade. Philip suspected Alexander might be gay, a major taboo in Greek society, and tensions arose. In his adolescence, Alexander befriended a young man named Hephaestion, who many believed was also his lover. For the stern King Philip, the idea of having an effeminate son as heir was a disgrace, so he brought Alexander prostitutes to try him out. Although Alexander later had relationships with several women and even married at one point, he remained close friends with Hephaestion for most of his life. Philip may have had doubts about his son's sexuality, but he had no doubts about his leadership abilities. At just 18, Alexander proved his leadership on the battlefield. He helped his father secure control of Greece, showcasing his brilliance for military tactics. It should have been the beginning of a great father-son alliance, but Philip did something that threatened Alexander's succession to the throne. He got married again. This time, Philip married a 20-year-old Macedonian woman named Cleopatra. No, not that one. If she were to give birth to a male heir, that Macedonian prince would inherit Philip's throne, while Alexander would remain a mere general and would receive orders from his younger brother. Alexander had no intention of accepting such a thing, nor did his power-hungry mother Olympias. Family tensions had reached the boiling point. On the wedding night, when all the guests got drunk, Attalus, the bride's uncle, wished the newlyweds that their union would produce a legitimate heir to the kingdom of Macedonia. Alexander didn't stay quiet and replied, "What do you take me for, a bastard?" He then threw wine in Attalus's face. Philip then lunged at his son but tripped and fell. Alexander burst out laughing. This is the man who wants to cross from Europe to Asia, but he can't even cross from one couch to another. These angry words sealed the father-son relationship. Alexander never had the chance to reconcile with his father. In 334 BC, immediately after the birth of his and Cleopatra's son, Philip was assassinated by one of his own guards. Olympias was widely believed to have arranged the elimination of both Cleopatra and her children, thus securing her son's ascension to the throne. At the young age of 20, Alexander became the leader of the immense Greek Empire. Fueled by his father's dream and his own burning ambition, Alexander set his sights on Asia to meet the Persian king Darius and defeat him. He crossed the Dardanelles with 40,000 soldiers, a daring move that marked the beginning of his legendary conquests. Darius refused to fight the Greek boy directly. Instead, he sent his Greek mercenary general Memnon to confront the young upstart. But Memnon was no match for Alexander. It was only now that Darius realized he was fighting a man who believed himself to be invincible. Alexander led his army from the front with his helmet adorned with feathers. You couldn't miss him. He clearly made himself a target to anyone who dared to fight him. Having to face such a cocky Greek boy, Darius gathered an army of 600,000 men and marched to Issus. Although modern historians believe that the number of soldiers was closer to 100,000, Alexander's 30 to 40,000 men were clearly outnumbered. With far fewer soldiers than the enemy and his supplies cut off in the midst of battle, Alexander seemed an easy target. But guess what happened? Yes, he managed to crush Darius's army and force the Persian king to flee in terror. Now a conqueror, Alexander had to do some PR. After all, the son of Zeus couldn't be viewed as a heartless tyrant. He allowed Darius's family members to keep their status and extravagant way of life and were placed under Alexander's protection. Darius tried to win his favor and sent him a letter offering his friendship, the hand of his daughter, and all of the territories west of the Euphrates River. Alexander's response was on par with his fame. He warned the Persian emperor not to address him as an equal, but as the king of all Asia. And as the new master of Asia, Alexander moved to conquer Tyre, a fortress island that the famous Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar tried to break into for 13 years, all in vain. But Alexander, he did it in 7 months, and then proceeded with the killing of 8,000 people and selling the remainder into slavery. So much for the image of a benevolent god. After this, Alexander's conquests continued. He entered Egypt and officially proclaimed himself to be a god. There, he met Darius once more. In what we now call the Battle of Gaugamela, Alexander defeated the Persian emperor, after which the Persian Empire truly belonged to the Greek boy. We'll talk more about this battle in the next episode, don't worry. The true jewel on the crown was the palace of Persepolis, where 180,000 talents of gold were captured. One talent weighed 26 kilograms, so from this point on, Alexander became the richest man in the world. He celebrated with a night of revelry and drunkenness, during which the palace was set on fire and people caused chaos in the streets of the city. Many soldiers felt as if they had achieved their ultimate goal, but Alexander's thirst for conquest was not yet satisfied. He also sought to blend Greek and Persian cultures, a revolutionary idea for the time. But Alexander's relentless hunger for conquest forced him to go further, thus reaching India. What can I say, the man clearly had a fascination for unknown lands. And India was indeed an exotic place that had a lot to offer to a man with so many desires. The women were strange, mysterious, and excitingly beautiful. So much so that Alexander actually fell madly in love with one in particular, Roxana, the daughter of a nobleman from Sogdiana. Undoubtedly, the decision to marry her was a great surprise to everyone, especially Hephaestion. But Alexander was completely enchanted by her and this new culture. He began to wear white robes and ordered his men to kiss his hands and bow or kneel before him to maintain appearances. In Greece, these gestures were reserved exclusively for the gods, and when his own historian refused him, Alexander ordered his execution. Was this the pinnacle of Alexander's goals? Nope. Unleashed by a relentless desire for battle, Alexander came face to face with one formidable foe, King Porus. With his war elephant, Porus pushed the Greek army to its limits and nearly defeated them. Alexander won though once again, but this time the costs were high. So high that his council advised him to pack up and return to Greece. He didn't like it, but he agreed. The army returned back to their homelands, but not peacefully. They conquered every city in their path. During one such battle, Alexander himself was injured by an arrow. He eventually recovered though, but left India behind for good. Back in Greece, Alexander's troubles didn't end. In July 324 BC, his beloved companion and friend, Hephaestion, perished from a fever. Grief overcame the great Alexander, and he was never the same again. 2 years later, he too fell ill with a fever, and for 11 days he laid sick. His men were worried. There was no designated successor, so who would inherit Alexander's vast empire? It was indeed a question without answer because, well, who could fill such shoes? Is there a man that could hold the empire together? On his deathbed, Alexander answered them, but it wasn't the answer they'd hoped for. When asked to whom he would leave his empire, Alexander uttered a cryptic phrase that still echoes in the history books: to the strongest. That was a mistake. With no clear successor named, his empire did not go to the strongest. In 12 years, it fractured into 20 warring factions, each with their own interests. If Alexander would have had an heir, maybe, just maybe, the empire would have survived and many conflicts of the next 1,000 years would have been unnecessary. A united, powerful empire spanning from Europe and well into Asia, 500 years before the Roman Empire, led by Alexander's multicultural vision, might have created an ancient world of enlightenment. Maybe. Regardless, what is certain is that Alexander's title as the Great is owed not just by his conquest. He reshaped the ancient political landscape, spread Greek culture, and left behind a legacy that still inspires. However, at the same time, he was no saint. His conquests fueled bloodshed and in the end created more instability than prosperity. The strongest inheritor never emerged, and his dream of a unified empire died with him. So what do you think? Was Alexander a visionary leader, or was he just a glorified warlord? Would his empire have thrived if he'd named a successor? Discuss it downstairs in the comments. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the life and complexities of Alexander the Great, don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations of history's fascinating figures and the legacies they left behind. I'd also like to remind you that I do have a Patreon page if you feel like you want to help this channel out. By the way, thanks to Dan and Lawrence Neal for their long-time support. In the meantime, I do hope to see you next time. Bye.